I wonder what was left out in the narration of saying 31 of Nahjul Balaghah. And what about it went outside the purpose of the group? Because it goes along quite well with saying 30 in terms of its addressing the four sorts of misbelief, while saying 30 addresses four categories of rightfully believing. One thing we need to remember is that our mental state can very much be affected by our physical state. And we gotta do what we can do with what we have. So let us not blame people for their lack in doing or not doing something if the ability is gone. But if you can get up and down for the prayers, you get up and down for the prayers. Maybe you don't get up and down in some other things. Maybe you can't learn anymore about the prayer, or can't even learn enough to do the basic. Some people might with the book. Some people should always pray in congregation. If you have a Muslim in the house, then they would be the ones leading the prayer. There are other examples that are, we can bring up. And we should endure such trials with a contentment, knowing that we're only obliged as far as our ability. And certainly many people are poor enough that they wouldn't even give the full charity amount at the end of Ramadan, that they would just give a piece of food, that they might even give a piece of food, and that would be their obligation. Yata jara wala yagaru yusingu wayati ilmautu minkum nemakanin wamahuwa demiyatin wamin wara'eh adabun qalis. Sometimes our gratitude is the way by which God will bestow things. And humans have two basic drives: fear and shyness. It doesn't mean we need to go around in guilt, shame, and fear for its own sake, but we should definitely use it when it does occur to give us a degree of safety, to teach us in regards to right and wrong. Now, excitement is certainly something that's part of life and even something to pursue at times, but we shouldn't just stir up things for the sake of energy. And even though some people are right, those who have been given position and use that position are definitely of those of a step ahead. Now, there's another Quranic verse or so that we can bring up in this regard. I don't quite remember it offhand, and we're trying to go through and make this comment, quickly. And one of the things that we can look at with this is the saying of the prophet in regards to, if you can do something that you don't feel guilty about, you don't feel ashamed about, then, that's usually enough, right? Of course, we have revelation and inspiration that guide us towards that, because people, you change their sensibilities, and then they think that something's right because they desire it, and that's not how it works. Or that they get themselves to the point that they're not ashamed or guilty or any. People get themselves like that with the worst of things. But at the beginning, any issue with modesty in terms of behavior or dress, that was an issue. But then they can end up doing of the worst of things once they start down that route. And some people might be all, I'm ashamed because I'm not learning much and I'm old and all this stuff. It's like, no. Sometimes old people learn far more than the people that are young, or when they were young, because they put their minds to that. I encountered somewhere this person who had memorized the Quran within it was over 2 years, and I think he died before he was Muslim for 3 years. And the year he died, he said something like, I was never somebody to learn music. I, didn't learn charts of things and all that stuff, but he, he just said, I'm going to listen to the Quran a couple times a month. I'm not sure what he meant with the translation. He could have been listening for 3 hours a day, 3-4 hours a day for, those last couple years, and he, ended up learning the Quran. Did he learn enough Arabic to be able to understand it well without a translation at hand? I don't know all this stuff, but dude could recite things that almost no one around could recite. So, and even if that's not the case, even if all you can do by learning is make it so you can say the prayer and say the funeral prayer and a few supplications for occasions and stuff like this. This is, or you're getting something done, but it's like people look at me in my condition, and it's like, but I end up getting more physical stuff done than a lot of people, because I'm like, well, I can do a little here and come back later today or tomorrow or something like that. And so there's no shame in doing that. I mean, some people make a social issue about it, but don't let that be your sense of shame. And regardless of how popular or unpopular we are, there is a distinction that can be shown amongst that. Now, that doesn't mean we go around wearing flags or something, These people wear these ostentatious costumes and stuff like that. That's not what's meant. But there are things, it's pretty easy in some ways. You can be surrounded by people who, they don't, there's a lot of things about one's appearance. And it doesn't matter about appearance, like that people talk about, it's oppressive it's like, well, it's a choice to be modest, and it's something that nature kind of indicates towards, but And let us not presume that people are against us or that there's something to correct until we actually witness that there is something to correct. We should meet people with the best of manners and a good approach and stuff like this. If people give you a peaceful greeting, then you can return any peaceful greeting to anybody. There's no reason to, give a different response about that. And somebody gives you a bad greeting, you just, and upon you or something like that. You can say that. Or you can say, may God guide you. And some people can't retain things, but that doesn't mean, we shouldn't be friendly towards them. The greatest forgiveness among humans is when revenge is possible. And some of the people, the disbelievers, are going to join in their funeral. Not that there's this interfaith compromise against the faith, but that they're that good to other people, that people are going to pray on your behalf, whether it's a duty or not. There are people that, if the worldly things seem to be overabundant in them, then people overlook or even follow along with their flaws. But when somebody seems to be lacking in worldly terms, then they ignore even what's right about the individual. فَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. So, let us remember that everything counts. That's real karma, is that the effects of the smallest good, of the smallest evil, will be witnessed. And we see elsewhere verses that indicate that it's not some gospel of prosperity thing, that we look at bad things happening to people and say, you deserved it. Or good things happen to people and we say, you deserved it, you're better than people, this is why this is happening. It's like, that's not how it works. We're tested with ease and hardship. And there's different verses that address that in different ways. Or sometimes you have the same phrase or even words comprising a verse, but they are in different contexts, or they form a pattern. And what we'll see in regards to the actions and beliefs, it's beyond the mere material sense. When it comes to the day of judgment, we will see the energy, the legacy, and the memory, what happened with that beyond, just the deed. And sometimes the lack of people or the illness is because charity is not being so given. And people who are going through hardship are obviously not people who would be as denied in terms of what they want and what they're asking for. And of course, if they're asking God for according to what is right, but it's important to have a good self-esteem. I'm not saying, you don't try to have your sense of yourself, because certainly if you're correcting yourself, it's not just, oh, there's things wrong with yourself. You encourage yourself in what is right about yourself enough to bring you to the point where I want more to be right about myself. I want there to be more reason that I'm upon what I'm upon. And sometimes there are disturbances in society, and one doesn't favor either side. You can encourage and discourage here and there, but one doesn't favor either side. Like people say, racism versus reverse racism. It's all racism. Knock it off. Or Jim Crow versus affirmative action. It's like, it's not right, and let's not compete about which is more wrong or more right or whatever. Or if all major political parties turn against the people in terms of, working for the corporate interests of their sponsors, well, then that's just something, with whatever. So let's not take sides in terms of, I seriously doubt it's going to get that much better next year or something like that. When this video is released or something, but, you don't favor something merely because it's a candidate or a political party or a country or any of that other stuff. Politics is a means to employ one's faith, just like anything else, but it's not engaged for itself. And let us remember, just like when it comes to our youth, there are some ways in which we are reliant on other things in the material realm for our means. But this comes through, God has set that forth. Now, I leave my comment on the sayings, and I move to the comment on the letters. And whether I'm going to finish the comment on all the letters or what the deal is going to be, but one of the things that comes through with the letters is that first, we should look at the Quran, we should look at what the Prophet said, and if the manifestation of what came after among A'imma, the Salaf Saleh, or whatever phrase you're going to use for that, then that's right. And one should withhold one's judgment, because this talk about the arbitration. See, the arbitration is that rather than you're delineating out, yes, some things are wrong, but I've heard a sermon. I was in, was it Beaverton or Hillsboro? Where was it? And it was in Oregon. And it was at Masjid As-Sabr up on the hill. And this person just gave out the list. If you do this, you're a disbeliever. If this, you're a disbeliever. If this, you're a disbeliever. But that's not the thing. If you abandon your salah, yes, you're a disbeliever. If you neglect it, it's left up to God to judge ultimately, because there is neglect, but, a person is still a Muslim. There are certain wrongdoing that one isn't a believer as long as that's one's character trait or one's in the act. But when it's over, if somebody willfully murders a Muslim, even if they're of a different sect, if they commit shirk and they know they're committing shirk, they're searching for monotheism. It's not the same thing as like, oh, they're doing something different or something. Or they get even a touch fanatical in terms of, oh, they feel like they have to pray at the masjid, or they'll even if they miss the prayer, it's like, no, you should actually, if you're not praying in the congregation, you should pray where you're at. And or some people feel like they have to dress like an Arab or they can't pray, even or whatever. So some people have some issues here and there, but it doesn't take them out of the fold of Islam. But if they actually believe that there's multiple divinities or multiple divinities in divinity, or they, interrupt their prayer to ask an angel or a saint or something like that to intercede for them, then that's what it is. Certain things could take from their prayers, like the 40-day taking away from the prayer in terms of the oracle believing is that you believe that a soothsayer, whether they're reading the stars or whatever, that they actually know because they've compiled some symbolic thing, that this is a way of prophecy, you could say. Now, I mean prophecy in terms of that which we should accept. There are entities that will direct people. But as a rule, people are just saying vague things and all this other stuff, or it's just saying stuff with the stars. That's not forbidden. What's forbidden is saying this happened because of this and this, and or this character trait of this person's like this because of this and this in their chart, and that sort of stuff. If you're going to come up with a symbolic story regarding that or some other oracle, that's fine. But if you put it in the context of, I know the unseen because of this, what you do is sometimes you gauge people's reactions, and you can do that without all that sort of stuff. But yeah, there's a difference between major and minor shirk, and even being out of the faith. But there are people who give long list of things that, oh, this, and it's like, oh, there's only a few things, dude. And yes, there are major sins, but those who commit major sins are not, totally out of the faith or something like that. And another thing that reads through is you definitely want to maintain your trust, particularly when you're head of state. Take regard in how you are with other people, and try to follow your natural inclination. And your natural inclination could be twisted, but you definitely want to hone that, and you want to always try to figure out who is in the right when things are being addressed. And migration still happens, and there's still beneficial migration, but there's a level of migration that stopped, because there was the 2 migrations in the Islamic community, and that was really it for them, at the very least, you could say that, is, to Yemen and then to Yathrib, which became Medina an-Nabi. So after Mecca became Muslim, there wasn't the migration anymore. And of course, the victory was relatively bloodless because nobody was fought for being a disbeliever when Mecca was conquered, or any other Muslim battle for that matter. But there was pretty much a surrender. And only those who wanted to remain enemies of the state, only those who would have, instead of going home or going to their place of worship, that they wouldn't be harmed. So, what was there, like 10 people killed in conquering 10,000 people? And sacred sites sort of reject people, you could say. There's people who sneak on to pilgrimage, but they believe from the Bible or some Vedic text or something from the Tibetans, or they believe the merit of Mecca, so they go on pilgrimage. But those who want to play games tend not to make it. Either someone discovers them and keeps them out, or something keeps them out. But I mean, it's not an absolute thing that some polytheist or something can't wander through and whatever, because that does happen. But certainly people are prevented from things and places in ways that are unexpected. You find out that some of the prophets, they wanted to excavate where they thought their graves were, and there was like a spiritual force that some of the archaeologists, in the case of Abraham and some of the others, were aware of, that prevented them from their work, and they're like, I can't do this. And they were in charge of the project, so they couldn't. So there, of course, was this limit to what they were doing. Of course, when you excavate a site, you don't have to get to the certain place to, discover stuff that's going to make your endeavor worthwhile. You definitely find that there's like this tradition to try to keep people off where they think the Holy of Holies might have been in Jerusalem. And there's plenty to find elsewhere. And actually, the real Holy of Holies seems to be where Masjid al-Aqsa is actually the hill, but the building with the gold dome that people tend to think is the Masjid al-Aqsa, it's actually the whole hill. Islamically, it's the whole hill. So, but yeah, there's evidence of the drainage ditches and stuff like this. So that was really the part of the Temple Mount. Because if this was before this, then this over here, so they did put it there. But it wasn't being used, the cleaning up and the restoration of the place as a temple open for all races. And, why are people so upset? Oh, we need to tear down the thing and build another temple. It's like it's open for everybody now, as long as you're decent and behave yourself. And there's even spaces to pray if you're a Jew or a Christian. So, and when it came to an example of rebellion, is that Aisha repeatedly heard and repeatedly had the opportunity to be guided, but it wasn't until there was the battle and she survived that she learned. But see, people can go through a lot of stuff and they can do a lot of things and they can finally leave. Now, people criticize Ali for leaving Medina and adopting Kufa to center his government on. And Muawiyah centered themselves in Syria. So the issues with the sort of people that would be somewhere could be said to be in regards to, the bad people of government, it was necessary to be somewhere else. Or that there was going to be problems with the government. And it wasn't to bring the bloodshed to there. And heads of state should take part in the battles. It's not that they sit in their palaces and direct things. And there was some stuff that was going on while this video is being recorded, and I definitely look at that and say, well, this guy regardless of what you say about the rest of this stuff, this guy, he goes forth and says, we need to do right with the army, we need to do right with the companies. He's beloved by his people because of this effort, and he definitely earned his way towards the top in terms of his own personal bravery or whatever. And one of the things that we're warned about in Islam is this mere revenge thing. Is we don't, when we go to war, yes, this person killed this person, and maybe there's a good reason for war, but it's not that it's a personal vengeance that we are going after. And this can make the whole thing relatively a waste if we make our battles a personal thing rather than preventing wrong or dealing with wrong otherwise. And some people, they do secret works. Their wrongdoing is with the purpose. They specifically address certain things. It's like the whole thing with terrorism is that, they do something in such a way that it has a deeper effect and a broader across whatever. Now, there is sort of a shock and awe trying to do that sort of thing in terms of war, but, people, certain criminal organizations, the Ku Klux Klan, developed a lot more fear than the actual violence and destruction that they did. And other organizations, which I some people may take issue if I actually mention the name, have been a lot worse, but they did it under this claim of social justice or something, and therefore, but they were all in the wrong. But sometimes, a person can be in the right, and they're trying to have a greater effect with what they're doing than their numbers give them. And that would be just, an aspect of war. It's not, something to get all too upset about. Sometimes things will go in your favor or not in your favor. It depends on your response, on your true allegiance that you follow. Okay, Muhammad's not around anymore, so how do we structure society? That you follow along with that sort of stuff, that you support actual Islamic government. It does matter the principles and consciousness that seems to be claimed by a leader. It does matter their ethics. Oh, and a side note about the prayer is you should pray in such a way that those who are following you can follow along. You should preserve and encourage the consciousness in which is going to benefit more than yourself. We need to know that protesting and riots are completely different things.